Do you think there's any amount of preparation that can prepare you for the game, or is the best way to actually go and embrace the suck?
You have to embrace the suck. Until you make the move to actually go out and meet with people, that is where your confidence is going to come from.
The sucking with the first 5 to 10 appointments or the first 5 or 10 calls is what's required to actually get confidence. My guest today, you guys, is another up and coming rock star in the real estate industry. Portia, hi. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we were just talking before we hit the recording. You are coming up to your first full year in this industry. And I think that's a really good place to start because so many people are getting into the industry. Give us your feedback on high level, your biggest ahas in your first year in real estate, and specifically maybe thinking back, okay, what was different than what I thought it was? And what is it actually?
Yeah, I mean, so before I got in, I was definitely with the mindset, it was during the pandemic when I'm like, oh, okay, I think I'm gonna, kind of get this going. I think I thought it was more, oh, I'm just gonna help people, and it is a form of helping people, but I think I thought it was more like, okay, I'm gonna start working with some people and showing houses, and it's gonna be challenging, but it's gonna be a good time. I didn't necessarily think I was going to become a millionaire overnight or anything like that, but not as much lead generation as I thought. I really did not realize like how much lead generation it really was.
Yeah. And specifically, I mean, that is a great place to dive in. Specifically what you're talking about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're talking about when you got into the business, you thought it was more of a service type role where it was more of an inbound, hey, I'm going to help these people through this transaction because, let's face it, everybody loves real estate. And so how hard can it be? What you found out was, and it's so funny, I posted this on my Instagram today, that real estate actually is an industry where the agent, in this case, you, has to be the one who is the one initiating contact. You have to be outbound reaching out to people because actually, this is a great question. How many people just reached out to you out of the blue? Like you didn't do anything. You just sat around and magically a bunch of people started calling you and listing and selling their houses with you.
None.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything you've done so far in your first year has been as a result of your proactive efforts. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, my first transaction was with one of my best friends. And, I knew they had sold their house and, I was just letting her know like, hey, I'm getting my license. I'd love to represent you in the purchase of your house. But yeah, I mean, it was having that conversation for sure,
And you were the one to initiate that even with your best friend.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just like, hey, I'll represent you, I don't know what your relationships like with the other agent, but yeah, definitely.
And I think that's a major takeaway for people watching this or listening to this podcast, either brand new to the industry or thinking about getting into the industry, is point number one or takeaway number one is for people to understand that if you're going to have any real success or make any money in real estate, you must be the one to initiate the contact. It's not a service business where you go sit in the office and people walk through the door like you would at a bank. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think one of the other things too, it's like, doesn't really matter what kind of lead it is, whether it's the phone or the internet or whatever, like you still have to learn how to have that conversation, And I think one of the things that drew me towards you and your program was it wasn't like corny and salesy like a lot of the others. It's like, this is just a conversation about real estate and servicing their needs. Take what you want out of it, right? It's just, you're just helping someone.
It's about them. That's exactly right.
But so you have to initiate that.
That's right. So let's talk about the process of initiating conversations. This is the hardest part about our business. And a lot of people have some type of reluctance to doing that type of activity, whether that be calling people or knocking on doors or texting people or talking to people they know about what they do. All of that is a form of reluctance. You faced it too. And so I want to talk about like how you dealt with that emotionally, how you're able to push yourself through that, because for most new real estate agents getting into the industry, it's not a normal thing. it takes a lot of mindset to get through it. So how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely uncomfortable. I will say that. Kind of before I got in, it's like, well, how hard could it be just, talking to people? But it's um, just knowing that, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You know what I mean? It's like they say no, which leads to my next point about rejection. You have to absolutely get used to it. And I'm still not used to it. I'm a little under a year and it still kind of stings every single time. And so I think people need to know that maybe you can get a little numb to it, but it still kind of hurts. You know what I
Yeah, for
mean?
sure.
But you just have to keep moving past it. It, like, the worst they could say is no, or yell at you or whatever. And it's like, okay, I know that I'm getting closer. The more no's I get, I'm getting closer to a yes, so.
Yeah. Well, and you had said something off air that I want to spend some time really going deep on, which was the more actual rejection you get, two things happen. The better you become, and the how did you phrase it? Like the easier it is, the more confident you become. So you're getting better,
Right.
and the more confidence you're getting, the more phone calls you're having with people, the more meetings you're having with buyers and sellers, although they don't always go great, do they?
No, I mean, my first ones were terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I mean, not that terrible in a way of, they were cool or whatever, but I was just messing up. I didn't have my scripts right. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think sometimes as real estate agents, we sit in front of the screen and watch YouTube videos of, listing presentations or whatever. Your training is amazing, but it's like, until you make the move to actually go out and meet with people, that is where your confidence is going to come from.
I love it.
Yeah. And so the first couple times, probably 2, 3, 4 times that I met with people that I didn't know, yeah, I was flubbing all over the place. I, was nervous, sweating, on the way there. But then after I left, I felt like, you know what? Is that like the worst it could be? Okay, I kind of went there, kind of knowing they probably weren't going to list with me anyways, since I'm so brand new. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I got so much experience just having those conversations. That I feel a lot more comfortable now. Like if I had to go meet with someone, I feel prepared. It takes those couple times of just really messing up and not knowing what the heck you're doing, in my opinion, to get that confidence.
Yeah. And it's what we talk about all the time, right? I mean, I probably say it on every coaching call, the learning's in the doing.
Absolutely.
And so talk to us, Portia, about the mindset that a lot of people have where they want to try to over prepare so they don't have to screw it up. They have this mindset. It's hard. You hear me talk to new agents all the time. They still have this mindset where they think they can spend time off the field preparing,
right,
so they don't have to suck at their first 4, 5, 6, 10 appointments. But is there any way around that? Or do you think there's any amount of preparation that can prepare you for the game? Or is the best way to actually go and embrace the suck?
No, you have to embrace the suck. I mean,
Yeah.
You just have to. And I was kind of getting stuck in that too. It's like, oh, I got to get my resume going, this and that. And it's like, my resume, this like piece of, paper isn't going to do anything for me for having a conversation with someone. You have no idea what they're going to throw at you. You could be, prepared as possible, but it's just the conversation. So you just have to do it. There's a lot of things you provide us in the program that are amazing, but all of it comes in time. Just go out there and do it. Don't overthink it. Go out there knowing you're probably going to suck, but that's okay, because that will get you moving forward.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, what you just said is exactly what I was going to say. The sucking with the first 5 to 10 appointments or the first 5 or 10 calls is what's required to actually get confidence. And so I think we spend so much time prepping to get confidence, to try to go around that somehow, but it's just impossible. So as you're doing more and more and more and more of this, what are some key things you've learned either while prospecting over the phone that leads you to more appointments, or maybe some takeaways that you found really help you when you're on an appointment with a potential buyer or seller?
I think, you always tell us, when you're telling, you're not, what is it? Telling isn't selling. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. It's all about asking questions.
That's right.
So the conversation moves forward so much further if I'm really just asking questions and digging into what they're telling me. If they want to say, oh, I'm planning on moving in the next 2 months, like, oh, okay, where are you moving? Is it an option to stay here? I mean, would you rent? I mean, do you really need to move? It's almost the more questions you ask, kind of almost talking them out of like, are you really sure you want to do this? That's where, it's like a real lead. And you're like, okay, this is a good conversation, and not being afraid to ask those questions. Cause I think sometimes the first couple of appointments for sure, I didn't want to ask the questions. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this opportunity. But it's like, it's better to just know up front, right? And just have the conversation.
Yeah. And I think what you said, there's a couple key things. Like if you guys are watching what Portia's saying, like go back and rewind it. Cause that little 1 minute segment, let me just unpack what you just said. It's like most people think about, okay, I can't make these calls because I don't know what to say. That's the wrong mindset. It's what questions do I need to ask? That was the first thing you said. Yes. That by itself allows the conversations to flow better, because the second thing you said was, originally, before you got into direct sales, like real estate, maybe you thought you had to be the one talking to have control, that if you were to ask questions, you were going to lose control. But what you've learned is the one asking questions actually does control the conversation. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the more questions you ask and the more you get to their motivation or their pain point, that's where that's the direction you need to take the conversation. And another thing that I just love about you and your program is like, we're not trying to force people to sell their home. Like, we are looking for people that genuinely want to sell. And those are the people you want to work with. And I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I may sell in a year or two. Like, maybe I'll keep them kind of on the back burner in my CRM. But that's not the person that I'm calling, like super following up with, because then you just become annoying. But when you really have these conversations with people and you really discover, yes, I want to sell, and that's their clear intention. You give us a definition of a lead, which is like amazing. Yep. So those are if you have conversations repeatedly with those people, I mean, you can't fail. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's consistency, which I'm working on myself. I'm not perfect with it, right? But if you consistently have these conversations and keep in contact and follow up is scary to me. I don't know why. Like, even with people that are ready to sell, it's like, okay, I'm going to make this phone call, like, because you're in my mind. It's like, believe in yourself. Like, oh no, I changed my mind. But it's like, no, in real estate, okay. I mean, there's always somebody, at least something, truth, right? Like, why follow up with someone that's going to crash or no intention to sell?
Exactly.
And it's when I followed up with people is when I have, got the business and pillars of business, be head down. That's another thing. And the fortune really is in the follow-up. I never really thought about that before, but then I got into this business and I'm like, wow, it really is. It's the people that have kept in contact, with clients and genuinely asked how they're doing and if they're still interested, that actually, follow through to the end.
Yeah, because the idea of talking to somebody who's ready to put an offer in a house today or put a sign in their front yard today is it's virtually in a statistical impossibility. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, what are the chances of you talking to a human today that says, yeah, put the sign in the front yard and I'm ready for showings today, or I want to put an offer now, like on this phone call? It's not likely. So therefore you are experiencing through your first year in this industry that it's about having the initial conversations and then putting them into a system where we can keep communication and follow up with them consistently over time. That is the thing that yields transactions. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I think having blind faith too. I mean, I'm someone that's, come from like a full-time 9-to-5 type job, right? You go to work, you do your job well, you get the paycheck. So there was never any like guessing, but this in being in sales, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this process. And then it's like hard to believe if you've never been in sales that I'm going to follow this process or this system and people are actually going to reach back out to me. And it just happened. I had my first, come list me call. And I was just like, wow, this is a real thing and I'm going to get paid. Like, so it was just really interesting. I'm going to be in a relationship and, kind of help the seller get to the end of the transaction. It's just insane to me.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I just met with I meet with my team every morning and we're talking about what you're talking about, which is pipeline maturity. And we're asking each other, we've been working on this concept for years on how do we explain it in a way that people understand it, that don't come from a sales background, such as yourself? What type of image can we show to visualize it? I want to hear how you try to explain this. Like if there was a brand new agent on this podcast with us, and you tried to explain what just happened to you, how would you explain pipeline maturity?
If you just keep, obviously you provide us a system to follow, that's awesome. And so the more people that you're putting in your pipeline is, if you're talking to them and they're genuine leads that want to genuinely sell their home, you can't just statistically, I mean, let's just say you put 100 leads, like good quality leads in your pipeline. Because I think too, as a new agent, you get lost on like what quality looks like, but if
Absolutely.
we really just listen to you and it's like, okay, I know what quality is. It's just letting go of some of those that aren't quality. That's a little bit hard, right?
Yeah.
And you just keep in contact with them, and they say genuinely that they are going to list their house in 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and you have, I'm just making up a number, 50, 100 in there.
Yeah.
Statistically, like, you will get some listings from that. If you're a good, genuine agent and you follow up and keep in contact, I always love to ask the question, when would you like me to contact you? Right? Like,
The best.
so it's not like, hey, I'm going to call you in 2 months. Okay, bye, click. It's like, hey, I would like to interview for the job. Asking for the business is huge. So they know that you're serious. And, okay, can you, call us in 2 months? Okay, no problem. Really call them in maybe 2 weeks. And then,
yeah.
just like having those conversations, and it just will mature. And again, I'm still working on that too. We're all a work in progress.
Absolutely.
But it's having the blind faith, because when it does start happening, that's when you're like, this works. You know what I mean? And it just motivates you to want to keep going even further.
I love it. I love it. Every time you explain something, you just give so many more nuggets. So you guys should have pages of notes, because I do right now, like based on stuff you're saying. And another thing you just said that I wrote down was asking for the business, right? So let's talk about this for 1 second. When you got started, did you have the mindset, like many others, that if I'm intentional with what I want, that is going to come across in a way that pushes these people further? And now that you're doing it, are you finding that people actually appreciate the authenticity and the honesty, and that actually brings them closer to you when you're more intentional with the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I got in the business, I thought maybe I would just have, like a consultation or a listing interview with somebody. And I'd be like, okay, here's my information. Call me when you're ready. Okay, they're never going to call you because they have a couple other agents kind of doing the same thing. But when you are, authentic and say, I would really like this opportunity.
Exactly.
Then they're like, oh, okay, she's serious. She's not just like, because I do it as a consumer, right? If someone's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll follow up with you. Or, I will, they don't ask for the business. I don't even think I do it intentionally, right? But I just kind of blow them off. But if someone's like, I want to do business with you, and they're serious and genuine, then that's the person I'm most likely going to go with. And so I find that, asking for the business is important.
That's just amazing. I mean, if that was just the whole video podcast interview, like that would be enough, because the way you articulated that was beautiful, and we have to let people know that we would like the opportunity to earn their business. And when we do that in a way that you're talking about, the person receiving the message, you become so much more appealing to them, like it's just like kind of like relationships, if you kind of think back in life, when you find out somebody's into you, whether you're into them or not, it's super flattering, isn't it not?
Right, totally.
It is.
Same.
It just is. And so whether you're interested or not, and that's what you're talking about, that's why it works so well. So looking ahead over the next 12 months, right? So you're coming up on your first year in July. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the next 12-month evolution, knowing what you know now with the skills that you have now, what do you think what do you think you can accomplish? Like, have you started to think ahead with what you want, like what your goals could look like?
Yeah. I mean, I filled out my business plan, it's kind of a fluid document, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, just getting it, having more conversation, I am having a little bit of call reluctance, because I think once you get in and then you realize like, this is what can happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we call it conscious incompetence or something like that. I'm there, and it's taking me a minute to get out, but the only way to get out is just making more contacts and doing the same thing over and over and over, right? To get confident. So I see myself, I definitely see myself taking more listings this next year for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because as you're getting started, you're working with a lot of buyers, which is fine. Doesn't matter where the business comes from, but moving forward, And even you having this conversation with me on this podcast is helping you verbalize into the world your intentions. That's going to
Right.
help you moving forward. So
Absolutely.
let me ask you this. So if you could go back a year and you just got your license, you just came out of the testing center, you passed your exam, it's amazing. You called whoever you called and say, I just passed. Remember that day. You could probably remember
Yep.
vividly that day.
Yep.
But you ran into your current self right now, the Portia I'm talking to. You bumped
Mhm.
into her when you were coming out of the exam center. What advice would you give the Portia a year ago, knowing what you know now, that other new agents could benefit from?
I would say that consistency in whatever you're going to do, just be consistent.
I
Be
love it.
consistent. Absolutely. I mean, I think you could be somebody that's like terrible on the phone, but if you make enough contacts, like you will build relationships with people, which will produce more business. So I would absolutely say just, be consistent, believe in yourself, tune out the noise, because as you know, in real estate, I mean, there's always somebody, screaming something from the rooftops, whether it's the market's going to crash or agents aren't worth anything or whatever. So you really have to tune out the noise and just be head down, choose some pillars of business, be head down and go for it.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. I think that, to your point, any strategy an agent decides to go after, they do. They got to head down. It doesn't matter what it is. I won't even advocate for any type of business model on this podcast, but whatever you choose to do, I think that you owe it to yourself to put your head down for 6 months before you even think about judging it. Like, that's how much time it
Right.
takes, right? Because most people, to your point, that come out of corporate, they're getting a paycheck every Friday. They're like, well, I work 5 days and then my bank account has money in it. That's what the people are used to.
Right.
So
Right.
they're not used to putting in a bunch of effort and getting nothing in
Right.
return. So that's why they bounce from one thing to the next, right? That's why that shiny object syndrome is so prevalent in our industry, because people aren't used to doing something without seeing results for a long period of time. It's like
Right.
getting in shape. It's like, I remember when I went on this journey and it took me a long time to see I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm not seeing
Right.
anything. Then the hockey stick growth. It was like, boom, boom, amazing things started to happen. So Portia, thank you so much.
Thank
You're going to
you.
really, yeah, for sure. I really enjoy working with you. This is going to help so many new people. And I want to thank you for all that you bring to our community as well.
Well, I want to thank you. I mean, your program is awesome. I tell everyone about it. My sister-in-law actually just joined. She didn't do the full-on coaching, but she bought your program. So I'm like, get in the coaching, get in the coaching. Like, it's so helpful. So, without you, I definitely don't think that I would be this far in this industry. So I would also tell people to get yourself a good mentor or coach. Of course, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money in the beginning, but I swear it's paid off dividends for me. I would do it again 10
Yeah.
times over to be in your program. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. And so if people watch this or replay or listen to this on podcast, whatever, and they want to connect with you because you've inspired them, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Is it Facebook or Instagram, or what's the best way these days?
Yeah. Facebook. My name is Portia, Portia. Last name, High. I'm on Facebook. And I'm in the Sacramento region. So
Easiest name ever, not like my name. So Portia High, find her on Facebook if you guys want to connect. Portia, thank you so much. Maybe we'll do this again a year from now so that we can, and I'm just so honored to be on this journey with you. So I appreciate you very much. And I'm sure we'll see you on a coaching call very soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Take care.